We are now one of the fastest aging countries. In 2010, 9% of our population were aged 65 and above. Last year, this became 16%. By 2030, we expect Singapore to become like Japan and some European countries today, where 1 in 4 or 25% of Singaporeans will be 65 and above. Aging will mean an inexorable rise in demand for healthcare and social care. At the same time, our means to provide for this will come under strain as the ratio of our working population to aged dependents decreases. We must therefore plan ahead to ensure we have the resources needed to look after more seniors. We must also take decisive steps to join the global effort in tackling climate change. If the world is unable to cut emissions sufficiently in time and temperatures rise beyond a certain level, we risk extreme flooding and weather events. This could result in food and water stress for hundreds of millions of people around the world. Island nations like Singapore will be especially threatened. Moving to net zero emissions will be a very costly affair for Singapore, a built-up city-state with very limited scope to tap on renewable energies. But it is a cost we cannot afford to skim on, for it is existential. It affects our very survival and the Singapore that our children will live in. So we must take actions now to progressively decarbonize our economy and change our way of life. The changes brought about by the pandemic, rising geopolitical contestation, climate change, as well as domestic issues like our rapidly aging society. These are the defining challenges of our time. They call for robust policy responses to reinforce our resilience and retool our capabilities for the future. More importantly, to overcome these major tests and trials, we must continue to stand united as one. And this is why it is more important than ever to renew and strengthen our social compact and to reaffirm our values and what we stand for as a nation. Our existing social compact has been shaped by our history, beginning as a young and vulnerable nation thrust into independence. We start and maintain the basic premise that no one owes us a living and that we are responsible for our own defense and survival. The pillars underpinning our social compact, the individual, community groups, businesses, and the state, all play a role complementing one another and contributing to a system of mutual support. The individual works hard to be self-reliant and to provide for his or her family. Community groups, be it unions, charities, or voluntary associations, come together to help different groups of people. Employers do their part to invest in workers, advance their well-being, and improve the quality of jobs. The government creates the conditions for a vibrant economy, invests heavily in our citizens, and delivers essential public services. The government, working actively with the community and tripartite partners, also provides an extra hand to those who start with less, to keep social mobility a defining feature of our society, to mitigate life's inevitable inequalities, and to provide support for the elderly. Even with the demands of building a nation and reinvesting continually in our future, we have been able to keep public expenditures in Singapore extremely lean. Government spending today, excluding COVID-19 related expenditure, stands at $88 billion, or about 18% of GDP. This is probably the lowest among the more developed economies. Yet it has produced social and economic outcomes that have been better than most. We generate sufficient revenues to fund this expenditure and to maintain a balanced budget. We are supported by our net investment returns contribution, or NIRC, which is a continuing stream of income from the reserves we have accumulated over the years. Over the past 5 years, NIRC provided, on average, a revenue stream of around $17 billion, or about 3.5% of GDP. So this means that for every dollar we spend on public services, about 80 cents is funded by tax, and the remaining 20 cents is funded through the NIRC. This fiscal approach has enabled us to keep our overall tax burden low. Currently, half of our workers do not have to pay personal income taxes. And in particular, for the middle income, we have deliberately ensured a low tax burden so that they can enjoy the rewards of their hard work. Put another way, for the quality of public services we have in healthcare, education, housing, transport, and many other areas, the amount of tax our citizens pay is much lower compared to many developed countries. The continental European and Nordic countries have a different social compact arising from their different histories. They have much higher levels of state-financed welfare provisions designed to meet the needs of their citizens from cradle to grave. The governments typically spend well above 30% of their GDP, 30. To fund such a spending, they impose high income taxes, usually much higher than 30%, even for the middle income group, as well as consumption taxes that range from 20 to 25%. We do not intend to adopt the European model of comprehensive universal welfare and high taxes. But as we tackle the challenges of a changing world, and as our own society ages and faces new stresses, we will have to do more to preserve and strengthen the unity of our people and our social compact. In fact, we have already been adjusting our approach over the years, with the government progressively doing more to support the community and individuals. Our social spending in particular has almost doubled from $17 billion to $31 billion over the last decade, and now takes up close to half of our annual budget. The increase has gone to programs that have made a difference in Singaporeans' lives, like higher subsidies in our healthcare system and in tertiary education, as well as schemes like Skills Future, Workfare, and Silver Support. In the coming decade, we will invest even more in our people and social infrastructure. We will spare no effort to ensure that all Singaporeans continue to have access to world-class education and healthcare, affordable housing, good jobs, and have peace of mind over their retirement needs as they grow old. We will strengthen our system of collective risk sharing so as to give Singaporeans more assurance in managing life's uncertainties. We want every Singaporean to know and feel that he or she has a stake in our society, that everyone's contributions matter, and that they will not be left to fend for themselves when times are down. We want to uphold that sense of obligation to each other and strengthen the assurance that whatever the challenges we face, we will always have each other's back. These plans require additional spending. They reflect the need to respond to lasting structural shifts in our society, as well as our new social and environmental aspirations. The spending requirements will therefore be recurring in nature, not temporary. Given this, it will not be right to dip into our reserves to meet these new needs. We must husband our reserves for use in major crises and emergencies, as was necessary during the global financial crisis, and especially in the last 2 years. We must ensure that we continue to get a steady stream of income from the reserves to benefit both today's generation of Singaporeans and our children and grandchildren. So let me summarize our fiscal outlook over the coming decade. On the expenditure side, our needs are significant and growing. By 2030, we expect government expenditures to increase to more than 20% of GDP. Most of this increase in spending will go to healthcare. On the revenue side, we will not have enough to cover the additional spending needs. The stream of income from NIRC should keep pace with economic growth over time, in spite of a more challenging global investment environment. But our sharply slowing labor force growth and hence slower GDP growth compared to the last decade will constrain our tax revenues. This is why we will make significant enhancements to our tax system in this budget. These tax adjustments will help to raise additional revenue and also contribute to a fairer revenue structure. And that means everyone chips in and contributes to a vibrant economy and strengthened social compact. But those with greater means contribute a larger share. At the same time, We are mindful of the impact of the tax increases on households and businesses, and will have a very comprehensive set of measures to cushion the impact and help Singaporeans adjust.